ago, we had our first death on the 5th of March.
Nick, I hope you're having a lovely evening in Dorset.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I bet it is. Lucky you in Dorset. I think that you're not reflecting the number of asymptomatic carriers and the number of people who had coronavirus asymptomatically or possibly had it before we knew there was the WHO declared that everyone is thrilled with the result. There is also evidence that, a lot of people have actually had it, but we can't prove it because we haven't got a proper antibody test. And the antigen test, which is the test that we've got 122,000 that were rolled out today, have only just really got going. So I just don't think it's right to say not enough people have had it, therefore we've got to stay in complete lockdown.
Yeah, but Rachel, we can be really confident to one thing, because we know 26,000 or perhaps 30,000 people have died from it. We know that 1 in 100 died from it with the best possible conditions. The World Health Organization, from the whole world, we know that ratio is accepted. So therefore, from the death number, we know the number of people 100 times that have been infected, which is 2.5 million. And the first, those really, we do know that. So it's thought that 96% of our population is yet to have the virus. We might all think we've had it, that sore throat thing, but we really haven't. Otherwise, there would have been a lot more deaths turning up in the hospital with characteristic symptoms of pneumonia.
Well, Nick, I'm not sure. Are you an epidemiologist or a statistician?
I'm a scientist.
Okay. What kind of scientist, Nick?
Well, I've got a PhD in aerosol science, so respirable particles, Porton Down. So I don't work at Porton now, but I have quite a bit of knowledge.
So you must know quite a lot about the transmission of coronavirus because it's about droplets. Indeed it is about droplets. Have you got any patented information that you could tell us about the transmission? For example, how distant should we be from another person if the aerosol effect of the droplets is not going to affect us?
Right, the virus is in water droplets that are respirable, either by cough or sneezing, but there is also a lot of concern that they could well be just in our breath. Like an example of that, do you remember the choir? I think it's because they were singing in the same room together. Yeah. So I don't want to pour aspersions on the 2-meter rule. I wear a mask all the time, and I have done since the very beginning of this because I'm not comfortable with 2 meters. Because I know about the aerosol movement, particle movement.
Do you think that the government should actually tell everybody to wear masks when they're out and about?
I do now, because basically, as I say, I believe, and I've got a model here, and I track all, I've synchronized our data to Spain, Italy, and France, and I can see what's going on from my own model. It's just simple on Excel. It's not complicated, but the fundamental point I make is the death rate that tells you how many people have been infected, because we know there's a 100-to-1 relationship. We really do. World Health Organization has sort of stamped that in stone. Yeah. So that's my concern. When we release the lockdown, my concern is that second peak, and my concern is people will ignore the advice to lock down again, and we could be in for something challenging.
Given how sedulously the public has followed the advice given so far, I think that the evidence is that they will follow the further advice. But listen, it's so great to talk to an expert in Dorset. Thank you so much, Nick. And I've got a new caller in Basingstoke, and his Stuart. Good evening, Stuart.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. And what do you think? Do you think the government's been too successful in telling us all to stay put?
I think it has been successful in getting us to stay put. I would like it to stay successful in keeping us safe and stay put as well. The virus has been in circulation, and my concerns are that unless we have a very carefully managed, easy lockdown, that our number will increase, the virus will spread more, we'll see more cases. Concerned about my kids going back to school, and while I understand all the points that
why are you worried about your kids going back to school when the evidence of kids getting coronavirus is that very, very few do, and very, very few children actually pass on the virus to older people?
And that's more my concern, is how much do we know about kids passing this on to parents, grandparents, etc. And whilst the effects on their children might be reduced, the effects on their parents and their grandparents will obviously be more if they catch the virus I'm interested in how I know that. I mean, it's very easy to
Because I think the child has to have it in order to infect an adult, and and very few children, luckily, seem to contract COVID-19. Can I ask, are you in business? Do you have a company? Are you an employee, an employer?
No, I look after the kids now. I used to be a police officer. I gave up a couple of years ago to look after the kids so my wife could go back to work. And again, there's my concern in, she commutes by train up to London, so how is she going to be able to socially distance on a train? And the second point, your last caller's point, in that there is a lot of belief in that this is an aerosolized virus that is transmitted just from people talking to each other in the air that you then breathe in, that they breathe out, and when they've been speaking. So how do you control that on a train? How do you control that in an office and prevent it from spreading in those situations?
But your wife so far hasn't got the virus, or has she had it and
No, she hasn't had it yet. We have a family member who has been in the hospital for 4 weeks on a ventilator.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I have a friend's dad who's died from the virus. A neighbour a couple of doors down from me was in hospital for a few weeks with the virus. So, whilst we haven't had it yet, and I hope we don't, we know people who have suffered from it. And, when you know people who have been directly affected, then
it's very frightening, Stuart. I completely agree. I mean, and I felt that obviously when family member was critically ill, and it kind of brings it home to you in a way it doesn't when you hear statistics, or you read something about how the cure is more deadly than the disease, and you feel this sort of sense of the economy is going to completely flatline unless we all go back to work. But I can see that you feel very threatened, and your family is very threatened by the virus. But what would the government have to say to you to make you feel better and safer?
I think there needs to be more clarity on how we're going to manage the virus going forward. It's going to be here for a minimum of 6 months, if not longer. How are we going to manage opening up our economy in order to doing that in a way that we maintain a low transmission rate in order to keep the number of infected and obviously the deaths at its maximum?
Well, I mean, if the R number stays well below zero for a few months, I mean, I hope that people, the confidence returns. Thank you so much, and I have to say it, stay safe. Brian has called from Golders Green. Brian, what's your take on the messaging? Hi, how are you? Thank you.
Yes, I generally agree with the principle that the cure should not be worse than the disease. And I think we are reaching that point with this pandemic, where I think the lockdown initially wanted to be justified because we didn't have enough data about the case fatality rate of this virus. But now we have sufficient data to suggest that the case fatality rate is only 0.1%.
That's what I thought. Brian, can I ask you your age group, and whether you're in a shielded group or whether you are young and hale and hearty and raring to go?
I am in the mid-30s, but I'm reasonably healthy and never been at risk. But I did suffer COVID-like symptoms last month, and I couldn't take the certain because the testing was not available, so I did isolate myself. And
I see.
It was probably the worst flu I ever had.
Brian, thank you very much for your call, and I'm glad you're out and about. You're listening to Rachel Johnson on LBC. Call me on 0345 6060 973. Text on 84850.
sources suggest the poorest parts of England are suffering the worst mortality rates. Charities say people in those areas are more likely to be essential workers and live in cramped housing. Premier League clubs have reportedly been told the remaining matches of the football season must be played at neutral venues. Clubs have reiterated a commitment to resuming matches as soon as it's safe to do so. And the weather, showers becoming confined to northern, western and central parts of the UK this evening. A chilly night for many, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC. I'm Nick Ferrari. I'm bringing you a daily podcast with insight into everything you need to know about the coronavirus outbreak as it rapidly develops. 1 in 4 unfortunately reuse vital protective clothing. This is wholly unacceptable, isn't it?
People need to have the PPE according to the guidelines. The guidelines do say that in some cases PPE can safely be reused, and that's a good thing.
Coronavirus UK, an LBC daily podcast with Nick Ferrari. Listen now on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
If you've been waiting for an ear, nose or throat appointment, the current situation can mean you're forced to wait even longer. But there is another option open to you. The Harley Street ENT Clinic is one of the few private clinics in London that remains open, offering expert consultations in person with protective measures in place, or by video call if you prefer to stay at home. Find out more at harleystreetent.com. harleystreetent.com.
At Vodafone, we know how important it is to stay connected, now more than ever. Whether you're keeping the family entertained at home or staying close to loved ones far away, switch to Vodafone Superfast Broadband and stay connected for only £22.95 a month. Available online today. Keeping the UK connected. Ready? Vodafone.
24-month contract credit check acceptance and price rise may apply. Superfast average speeds from 35 megabits per second. Vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. For all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Rachel Johnson, tweet at LBC.
You're listening to Rachel Johnson here on LBC, and tonight I'm asking, how do you feel about the end of lockdown? Are you excited to get working again, or worried about potential health risks? I want your calls on 0345 6060973. But before I return to your calls, I was very interested today in hearing the comments of Professor David Spiegelhalter, who tried to put the risks in context. Let's hear from him.
This is very worrying indeed, and our research has shown the same, that people in the UK are particularly anxious about this and that they are reluctant to go out. Now, if you're old and vulnerable, you're very sensible. You really do need to protect yourself. But the risks drop so much as you get younger. I think the media is to blame by emphasising deaths, the occasional deaths of young people, healthy young people, getting enormous coverage, and it means that I think many people are definitely over-anxious about their chance of both getting the virus and the harm they might come to if they do get it. And, I still think as a rough rule of thumb, if you get the virus, your chance of dying is roughly about the same as you would have had this year anyway. And if you're not worried about dying this year, you shouldn't be so worried about getting the virus. But, I think we do need to have some sort of campaign to encourage people who are at very low risk to actually get out and start living again when we're able.
Reading between the lines there, and I obviously am not prior to any inside track, I think we're going to have to move to a place where the country has to adjust to a new normal, which is quarantining the sick and quarantining the very vulnerable and quarantining possibly the old, although they are very resistant this idea, but not quarantining the healthy. And that's going to have to be the sort of switcheroo that the country is going to have to go through, and it could take weeks, it could take months, and let's hope it doesn't take years. But I also think that it's going to be up to individuals eventually. When the 5 tests are met, individuals will have to gauge the risks for themselves. And if Spiegelhalter is right, and the risk of dying from coronavirus if you're ill is no greater than the risk from dying from your existing condition, then I think people will, gradually, rebuild their confidence, and they'll want to get out and about. Chris has called from Richmond. What's your view, Chris?
Well, my personal view is I'm all right, I can work from home in an office. I've got to go to an office in London when things lock down, but I'm worried about other people. My brother-in-law works for one of the airlines, so I'm not going to name at the airport. He's already had COVID. Yesterday, I read something online that there were 2 flights coming into London, and there were 500 passengers crowded around one baggage belt. You can't do social distancing in certain professions, and I'm very worried that people are going to be forced back to work when it's not good for their health and safety.
But what David Spiegelhalter, you heard the statistician from Cambridge talk. He said if you are essentially fit and healthy and under 70, then the risk of dying from COVID is statistically pretty small. So why are you so worried?
Well, three people, not personally, not from my situation, but 3 people in the GMB union who work at Heathrow Airport have died of it. 3 people.
I knew that.
So those people don't have a choice because they might be part of it. Like an airline, had your part of the work for an airline now. They said you've got to go to work or you've got the risk of being sacked. And clearly the unions will take, will have to intervene for this very concerning situation, isn't it, for some of these people?
I think what we're hearing about the airline industry is that we're going to have a lot more testing and a lot more clearing before people board aircraft. We're talking, I've heard people say that you're going to have to leave 4 hours before you catch a flight, and then you're going to have to pass a temperature test before you board a plane. So this is going to, I hope, protect people who work in the airline industry.
Does that mean you'll have to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning for a 6 o'clock in the morning flight? I just don't think that's going to be working. But I'd like to ask you another quick question, actually.
Please do.
I've got you. You've got a direct line into someone who has a lot of influence and power. Please, can you ask him, will he scrap the NHS surcharge for people from abroad? We had loads of people dying in this country. His own care was about people from Portugal, from New Zealand. People in this country are using the service, and they're having to get charged to use the service. They're working in day out to save people's lives. And frankly, it sickens me that we charge them 400 quid a year to use the NHS when they're doing that. Please, can you make a personal appeal to get rid of that tomorrow? Because there is no reason why that has to continue in the current scenario.
I think I will, and I think I might add that he should restore the nursing bursary so people who train as nurses can get some financial support, as students can get student loans. But Chris, I mean, what would the government have to do or say to make you feel that it was safe to go back to work?
Oh, I mean, I have no problem going back to work, provided that it's possible to socially distance on public transport. I don't have to get the tube, thank God, but I could easily go in early and leave late, and if I have enough social distancing, I might not be able to use the coffee machine. I don't personally have a problem. I can cope with it. I'll just flex my working hours, but public transport will not be done. I think they need to think very carefully about how that's going to work for lots of people in London.
And I suppose you'll be wearing a mask too.
Well, I think it will be, yeah. I've had it before when I've been to Asia when the SARS crisis just happened. When was it, 2003? I went to China a few weeks later and I wore a mask for a lot of the time and got on with it. And I think we're just going to have to get used to it, really.
The new normal. Thanks so much, Chris. Tony from Staines has texted in and he says, when I heard of an acquaintance being in an induced coma whilst on ventilation with the virus, my perspective changed instantly. I had no idea what ventilation meant. Fortunately, he is recovering, but it's a long journey. No one at any age would want ventilation. Following the rules until I feel safe. Thank you for that, Chris. From Tony. Alex has called from Pimlico. Alex, hi.
Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening.
Congratulations on the new gig after the pledge.
I thought you were going to congratulate me on the new arrival.
Well, no. I'm not going to go anything about your brother at all. Not talk about that.
That's very courteous of you. Hi, yes, sorry.
This whole thing, this COVID thing, which I've had as well, and not as bad as your family. Very simply, the new normal, this is going to cost us 10 years of austerity, And this is, as a 50-year-old man, I'm going to be paying for this for the rest of my life for the free money that's been given out to governments and businesses. And there'll be no one flying on a plane. Me, I love planes, transatlantic, Caribbean. That's not happening for a year. When we go back on the plane, it's going to be very expensive for the rich, like the 1970s and the 80s. The new normal is people are not going to get, when the lockdown lifts, people are not going to go out. Even money in the businesses and shops are not going to be the same. People out there need to have a very strong word with themselves, because their heads are wobble. This is going to be absolutely 100,000 dead by the end of the year. We're at 30,000 now. This is UK. This is a lot
We're at
bigger,
26,000.
worse than everyone thinks, Rachel.
You think it's going to be worse? Can I ask you something, a slightly naughty question? Do you know anybody who's enjoyed lockdown and has been furloughed on government money to sit at home and thinks, well, actually, this is really quite nice?
Yes, I do. Free money, and guess what? There's not many checks and balances going on with it, so there's a hell of a lot of fraud going to be pulled out of the ether in the next year or two. So indeed, free money up to $2,500 a year, $2,500 a month. People are doing nothing for it. What's not to like, Rachel? A lot of these people are loving it.
And I think this is why Rishi Sunak is not going to give another 3 months paid furlough, because I don't think the taxpayer necessarily should pay for another 3 months.
I've asked your friends at Sky News, big people, to put on the right-hand side of the screen the UK deficit right now, every day, all the time, like the pound and the dollar and the euro. Let's see what the deficit is now, because it's billions and billions and billions. It's unfathomable and unthinkable.
It's £2 billion a day, and it's been £100 billion so far. Thank you so much, Alex. I've got a call from Frank in Hull. Hi, Frank.
Hello, Rachel. Congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm 58, so I'm thinking, well, if I could go out and catch COVID-19 now, I'd probably be ill for a while, then I'd recover, but then I'd be immune. The alternative is trying to avoid catching it and hoping someday somebody produces
a vaccine.
Sure. And I don't think that's going to happen, because it just seems that it's very good at mutating, and there's God knows how many variations of it anyway. So in some respects, when people of a certain age, my attitude is I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'd be better off going and getting it now. And then, of course, if it's possible for me to actually have a certificate saying this guy's had COVID-19, you can give him a job doing XXXX, and he's not going to be a danger to any. If, for example, if there are jobs where they say we can only employ people who've already had it, who are not contagious, and they can go and do all sorts of other
So, Frank,